Cybersecurity Update. Protect your websites and applications from hackers.
And for this, I'm really happy to invite on this stage Robert Grant, Chairman and Founder at Crown Sterling. Please give him a big hand. Please be louder. Also, put your hands together for our moderator, Dustin Plantaho, Forbes Monaco editor, crypto, and founder of Crypturns.com. Our next speaker, Dr. Jason and Simas, will be a bit late, but we'll probably... Oh, Simanauskas, please give him a big hand.
Hi.
Am I correct? By the way, have I pronounced your name correctly? Simas, can you hear me? Have I pronounced your surname correctly?
Simas.
I don't know. Simanauskas, is that
Very
correct?
good, very
Okay.
good.
Thank you. Please give him a big hand, Director of Partnerships at ConnectPay. Please be attentive and prepare your questions. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Turn your microphone.
There we go. I think we're on now, Robert and Simas. And to those out there, we're going to have a conversation regarding data security. You know, we've all heard of these people called hackers. I think there's a number of them walking around here. And so as I talk to each panelist and to get to know their story, what they focus on, what matters to them, I think that all of us can agree that in life, well, success leaves clues. So, Robert, I mean, some of the biggest corporations in the world, their systems have been breached. Why?
Well, I think it's multifactorial, but you know, I think one of the things it's just become something that the world has gotten used to, right? We just see it every day. There's another story of another major breach. And I think that there are many aspects of it. The aspect that I tend to focus on is on cryptography and encryption. And the reason is because even if your systems get breached, if you have an excellent system that doesn't have to be dependent on a block cipher, right? Because a block cipher, once it gets cracked, you have all the files lost. This is what's happening when you have like Equifax, so they lose 400 million records of people. It's all tied to one breach, and then all of it's lost. So I think that's a major issue. So we need a new type of cryptographic protocol that is not tied together across all these files. And so that's what we try to focus on at Crown Sterling.
And so, Simas, same question to you. I mean, your day-to-day focus, does data security matter? I mean, if I have nothing to hide or I have nothing of value, should I be really worried about this?
It's paramount. Data security is so critical to financial institutions as a reputational aspect. You simply cannot compromise on that. It's like compliance, you know? If you lose to data security, the same as lost to compliance. It's very important, very critical. That's why at ConnectPay, we take it very seriously. We're ISO 27001 certified, and we have a lot of processes in place, and now being PSI DSS as well, level 1 certified. So, I mean, financial institutions or fintech as a whole is one of the most targeted sectors in the world. Yeah. So hackers need to be only successful once, and you need to be successful 100% of the time. So it's a real battle.
You know, I can appreciate those of you that are sitting here. You know, they say that there's always something that keeps somebody up, right? At night, you know, the people here want to learn, look, I'm responsible for a corporation system. I'm responsible to protect the data integrity of the people I work with. And you want to know, well, how do I do that? How can I utilize blockchain technology to, quite frankly, change or make it a game changer? So, Robert, you know, we hear this word blockchain.
Yep.
And there are many ways people have tried to explain it. But for people like me, I'd like you to dumb it down. What is blockchain?
Well, I mean, it's funny because if you talk to most people in the outside world and you ask them what blockchain is, they think that itself is an encryption. Like if you just do a survey and ask consumers, they may know the word decentralization, but they don't really know what that means. Now, people here know that it's about a distributed ledger, right? And there's a whole governance process that's around it that's unique and different. And there's so many other aspects about having a historical record that cannot be changed. It's immutable, right? So all these things are core aspects of what's exciting about the blockchain industry. But when you actually get down to the consumer side of it, people don't really understand it yet. I think it's one of the things we have to actually get past. And on this topic of security, right now, as an entire industry, we've all gotten so used to believing all the standards bodies that already exist. But the problem is the standards bodies cannot keep up fast enough with the pace of innovation of that one hacker that only has to be successful once. So let's take NIST, for example, the National Institute of Standards of Technology. They've just spent the last 5 years working on an approach to fix the quantum problem, right, for quantum computers. But they took 5 years to do it. In the meantime, there have been many new advances. And now, just in that amount of time, people kept thinking it was only 10 years away. 10 years away, kept pushing it out, fear, uncertainty, and doubt on quantum computing. But guess what? IBM later this year, and in the first part of next year, is launching a more than 1,000 qubit quantum computer, which will be able to crack at least 99% of the current cryptographic protocols that are already available on blockchain and through the banking systems.
So, Simas, before I get to you on that question, Robert, I have the opportunity, I know you on a personal level, and for those here, you might ask, why is he so passionate about this? Before you had this role, you were also the president of a very large organization. And what you saw, and tell us the name of the company, what you saw there, not what they were doing, but the threats that were always around you. And why do you believe now that you're in a position to make that change?
Well, I mean, my historical sort of perspective on this comes, I was a CEO of large corporations. I was CEO of Bausch & Lomb Surgical, the eye care company in the pharmaceutical field. I was also president of Allergan Medical, and I launched major products like Botox and Juvederm and Lap-Band, Latisse, made them household names. So that was sort of my sort of marketing push, but I was always super interested, and I had a love for mathematics. So when I discovered a prime number pattern in 2018 and published it, it caused me to start looking deeper into the question of quantum computing as well as geometric solutions. And I was quite interested to see just this last week, there was an article that came out in Ars Technica about how a geometric approach was used to crack encryptions in the wild, which was kind of satisfying because it's one of the things I've been saying for the last few years. So I'm very passionate about this, and I believe that as an industry, I mean, if you Google right now, how long does it take to factor a 2048-bit encryption? Just Google it. It'll tell you 300 trillion years. It's not true.
So now, Simas, I'm going to come at you from like a beginner guy question. And so why I'm the head of Forbes Crypto for Monaco. Can the blockchain be hacked?
I'm not a technical expert on the blockchain technology, definitely, so I cannot answer that. So I think everything can be hacked. Yeah, so it's a constant battle between those that build things and those that break things. Yeah. And
so you're saying a code. So you can hack a code.
Again, I'm not a technical expert in here, but as far as I know and as far as I understand, it's an ongoing thing that you need to be just constantly aware and constantly at the forefront. If you're not at the forefront of this battle, ensuring security and integrity of your systems, then one day you'll slip, and then a lot of the things can go down the drain. And if you're a fintech company and a financial institution, your client funds as well, and that will be tragic.
I love the way you put that, because there's an old quote. I don't know if it was a proverb, if it was one of those anonymous quotes that said, "Take heed lest ye fall." It's kind of preparing for the next thing. That right now, the information we have is the only information we have. So you must assume at some point there will be a new variable. At some point in the future, there'll be something that shifts the mindset, technology, that will go to that next level. So the gentleman at the end, and I apologize, we didn't meet beforehand. I'm Dustin.
Sorry. Yeah, so let me go and move over near you since I kind of limped up here
I like that.
a little bit late. Sorry for being late.
Over here. It was me in a chair.
So anyways, I'm Dr. Jason Gammage. So my role is I'm a Chief Information Security Officer, formerly with AVG, an antivirus company. You might have heard of them. I've been in the security field for 32 years now. So when we're talking about encryption and how it can be broken, it's absolutely true. I mean, the main target, as what you're asking, is it's not about code, and there's vulnerabilities that can be introduced into code or be found in code. As one of the things I found is application security, typically there are mistakes that are made. And the focus on training people who are coders to actually code securely is only a new thing. In most of my career, I spent a lot of time with the application security teams developing a security expert inside of that team to be able to be the hero who's the subject matter expert, knows where to come to us in information security when they have questions. But as far as quantum computers is going, of course it's going to change the game. It is. And I've kind of been trying to change the paradigm of how we look at security. If we have sensitive information, similar like blockchain, do you really need to keep it online all the time? And that's one of the questions that I'm starting to challenge people to think about is, first, does it need to be on the internet? That should be the first question you ask when there's something sensitive. Second question you need to ask is, does it need to be always on the internet? And if the answer is no to either of those, then why are you putting it in the cloud? Why are you storing it around these things? What people do is they focus on access control, and they focus on being able to encrypt and put it in there. These things can be broken. They can be bypassed. SolarWinds is a great example of a nation state being able to bypass port control, which is what, let's go into air gaps. Air gaps typically nowadays are found where it's a manual disconnection from the internet, and it's something that was being used and still is being used in a lot of industrial control systems, but not typically with sensitive information. So if you don't need to control things, put it in an air gap. Well, nowadays it's all about access control, and that means port control. If you have port control, it can be bypassed. That's what SolarWinds did. It bypassed it completely, got in. Yeah. So one of the things that, for instance, my company, what we're doing is created a solution on disconnecting information from the internet and having a different way of connecting it. So for instance, since this is about blockchain, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's say you have a wallet, and you want to be able to store your shards in a couple different places to be able to protect it, right? Well, one of those places should be something like Goldilock, which is my company, where we have a solution where you can put one of them on it, you disconnect it from the internet completely. When you want to access it, you have to make a telephone call or an SMS to be able to reconnect it, for example. And it's not like just a typical like SIM swapping attack or something that people think about with SMS. This is really it's only you that could absolutely get in there to unlock it. So you go to access your wallet and it says it's disconnected, and you need to then make that other out-of-band communication, which is not connected to the internet in any way. That's the key. It's not on the internet. You open it up, and then you're able to access that shard, which puts your chain back together, and you'll be able to use it. You'll be able to access it, and then when you're done, you redisconnect it. It cannot be hacked by quantum computing. It cannot be breached because it's not connected to the internet, right?
Does that work for IPFS too? Can I ask that question?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So I would love to address this question you asked about, can blockchain be...
As the moderator, I say you may.
Can it be breached? Okay. So here's how you could do blockchain, right? And I've done quite a bit of research on this. There's something in the blockchain, whenever there's a change to the state transition of a blockchain, that gets encrypted, right? The state transition function has an encryption, and it has two aspects to that encryption. There's two types of encryption. It's interesting, even people that work in blockchain don't always fully understand how the encryption works. The two aspects to encryption are symmetric key and asymmetric key. So symmetric key would be what we consider how we call AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, or SHA-256. Basically what that does is it uses a block cipher, okay, and it takes everything and truncates it down to a 256 character, key. The other aspect is asymmetric keys. Asymmetric keys are when you are trying to transfer that data. Symmetric keys are used for stored data, data in storage, data not necessarily in transit. So if you want to send something to another party, we have this great thing called public key cryptography. It's asymmetric key based, which means that you're able to, with very little information through what's called a one-way street function, an equation that is difficult one direction but very easy the opposite direction. For example, an elliptic curve, or in the case of RSA, which is very easy to understand, a simple factorization algorithm. two numbers. If you take 5 times 7 equals 35. And so 35 could be a public key transport, although not a very good one because everyone knows 5 and 7 are the two factors. But let's say we took that up to 12,193. What are the two numbers to factor that would factor that number? It would take you a while through a trial and error process to find it. Now we know it's a bit easier through geometry, and I published a paper on this. But we'll say this asymmetric key is where the real quantum risk is. Because it is non-trivial for a standard computer, even a supercomputer, to factorize a very large number. Let's say a number with more than 617 decimal digits in it, which would be a 2048-bit encryption, which is kind of a standard right now for RSA, and kind of in the 250 to 350 bit range for, say, an elliptic curve, which has different kinds of complexity associated with it. So this issue right here means that when I'm going to make a change to a blockchain state transition function, as the change is going through, I'm going to send, let's say I'm sending $100,000 to Dustin's wallet. And I have a public key address for Dustin's wallet.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Well,
Simas, you heard it right here, right now, 100,000 to me. Keep going.
I think I already did that before on something else. But
well, can I get in on that?
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, exactly.
We're going to do.
So let's say I send both of them $100,000. Now it's 50 for you and 50 for him. What happens? I'm sending over to all the node validators and saying, please, validate this transaction that I'm going to send 100 grand broken in 2 tranches of 50K each. So then everyone validates it. But let's say that a quantum computer or an attacker intercepts the public key for you and for you. And they are very quickly able to find the 2 factors or the elliptic curve exponentiation. Then they can crack it and redirect the funds to them. That's how that works. Now, quantum computers are supposed to be able to crack encryptions in something called polynomial time, right? Which is many, many, many times faster than exponential time. But if there's a geometric solution, that's constant time. And that's what was just shown in Ars Technica just this week. And basically, I'd written about it, and this is very real. So the point is that you can intercept messages, or you can get into a wallet that's not quantum encrypted. So just a standard public key cryptography. It's a public key address. It's so simple to use. That's why we love it. But the fact is, it's not resistant to a quantum attack. So if it can quickly, and by the way, even with 60 qubits, a Chinese research group at Hefei University, and I read the paper and it's legit, was able to perform a function of a complex mathematical task at a speed that was 10 to the 23rd power times faster than the fastest supercomputers could perform. Now, factorization is one of those complex computational tasks. So 10 to the 23rd power, anyone have an idea how many years that would be in comparison if it took them 4.2 hours to crack? So you now know that if it's 10 to the 23rd times, I can reverse the math on that and find how many years that should have been. And what it should have been was 10 to the 20th power years. This is quintillion years, not trillions of years, not billions, not quadrillions, but quintillions of years. Quintillions of years. That means that with a 60-qubit quantum computer, Hefei University was able to crack the equivalent of a 250-bit elliptic curve. So I believe this is already happening.
Yeah, one of the things though is this is very expensive to do, and one of the reasons why you want to put encryption, you want to put things in place, is because of the return on investment for your typical hacker. If the investment is too high, the ROI is too high, they're going to move on to someone else. And so right now, most hackers don't have access to supercomputers. So so what do you do today? I get in the future we got a lot of work to do on figuring out how to do things better, and it sounds like you're on the right track. But today, what do we do?
So let me throw that at you then, because they say the best way to predict the future is to create it. That if the threat comes 10 years from now or 30 or 40, well, the seed had to have started somewhere. Has anybody ever seen a really beautiful tree before? I've got family that has a sycamore. and it's over 100 feet. And it's interesting that this once started as a seed that someone said, no way, it will never be that big. It can't because they only saw it here. So there are threats that are going to happen along the way, and I'm going to ask you in terms of what you see, what is a threat to, let's say, the blockchain?
The threat to blockchain, I think, right now, from what I've been seeing, just from just the purely information security standpoint, what people have been asking and what they're talking about is really about protecting keys. I mean, it seems to be that is the focus.
So you can repeat that: protecting your keys.
Yes, and so as I was talking about the offline storage, why don't you store even your keys offline all the time if you're going to use for authentication keys to get in as well?
So you were talking about earlier that you're building something that is off.
Built. Yes.
Tell us more.
So we have a patent on this solution. Basically, we came up with this idea of making an air gap simple and remote, able to be used, and so it's a simple layer 1 device, which means that it plugs in. Think of it like a switch inside of an Ethernet cable. You can turn it on or off, and the way you activate it is something that's not connected to the internet. So once it's disconnected, it's really disconnected. It's no different than unplugging the cable from connection and then plugging it back in, but you can do it remotely. So it's a simple device that can do it. And one of the things that we also did is put it in a data center and said, okay, we're going to host it.
I love this because what we've been able to do now is we'll merge it all together. It's an ecosystem that
Yes.
we are but one part of this highway.
Always evolving.
It's always evolving. And I have the opportunity to have a mentor. His name is Buzz Aldrin. Anybody know that name? Kind of
Yes.
good. He is 92 years young. And I was at his house last month celebrating his birthday with him. And I'll tell you what's fascinating. So I need you, my math guys, what year was he born in? Please, somebody do some math quickly.
I'm not a math guy.
Oh, come on. Someone at least Google it. Let's say this.
I have a PhD in forensic psychology.
Early in the 40s or 30s.
30s,
He was a young
30s.
man. In the 30s, he was a young man. How many people back then, if they were to have said, hey, one day we're going to put somebody up there, would have said, yeah, that's going to happen. They would have said, that's impossible. The goal is, how can we prevent? And I love conversations where people disagree. Because to me, that disagreement, it forces us all to reconsider our own stance. And all of you, as we come down now to the final few minutes, as you get to decide what you're going to do next, that in your own life, in your own journey, in your own business, that there will be those things that you are passionate about. All it takes is all you got. And the people on the stage, they have dedicated themselves to a mastery. They are people that don't quit. They don't give up. Sometimes it might even drive them to the place where they're 1 percentage point away from madness. But I can tell you this, the most brilliant minds in the world that have ever been and ever will be were the ones that said, if you could only see the world from my lens, you'd understand. We have people on the stage that have worked in the world of keeping those viruses from destroying everything around you and shaming you and humiliating you. To those that are now working on technology that will allow you to implant an LCD lens into your eye, that'll allow your smartphone and the metaverse to all be connected. And so that is the question. We all will have a $1 million moment, aha moment here. And in this building, there are lots of things to look at. Some of the smartest people, in my opinion, are the ones saying, I'm worried about the data security part. I'm worried about the threats that we don't know about and the ones we do. And so back to you, my friend, at the end. What excites you most as you look at now this evolution? And I'll use His Excellency Adnan El-Nourani, and he's working on the Future Innovation Summit. Is that what we should be focused on, is the future, or should we just focus on right now, the present?
I think we cannot afford to concentrate on the present. We always need to think of the future. And I'm really excited about now the limitless possibilities that we have in the environment that we have. Really bright minds working on the technology products that can change the world, essentially. This is what I'm most excited about. The key thing for us from the security standpoint is to ensure that those great ideas are not compromised by the people that want to break them, and by the security that is being threatened. So we can only think about the future. Great things will happen, I'm sure, but we need to be one step ahead as well, thinking about security.
Well said. Well said. I tell you, I'm excited about that there are quantum-resistant solutions now, right? Which is really cool because look, the
future.
White House
Remember, this is the future.
Yeah, the White House just announced. Everyone said, oh, don't worry about quantum, it's 10 years away. But look it up. The White House 1 month ago issued an edict across all branches of the United States government. Every branch must be on quantum-resistant encryption within 6 months. Within 6 months. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen the US government do much in 6 months. So for them to have made that decision says a lot. We couldn't get masks for 6 months, right? So this is a real issue. And I think now we've got a solution. One-time pad encryption that has been made practical. It's the world standard, the best. It's the one that's used for nuclear codes. And this is going to now be available to the world to be able to use through our platform in a key compression that is outstanding and practical.
So now when we look at the governments around the world are starting to implement technology found in this ecosystem. They do need to worry about the greater threat long from now because they are going to be the ones to attack. But now for the rest of us, the Dustins, the day-to-day threats that we face. That is the head of Forbes Crypto for Monaco and other countries. I face attacks. Recently, my own account got compromised and my password was really, really challenging. And so how can I shield myself? How can I keep things around me private?
Well, as we were saying, the future is the future, but tomorrow is also the future, and there are some things that you should be doing now. That's, preparing for the immediate future rather than waiting for the long term to catch up. So things that you can do is change the way you think about how you store things. Don't put everything in the cloud. That's just one of the best things I can say. This whole evolution to move it into the cloud, it makes sense, but it's only for convenience. Yeah. It's not for security.
Wonderful. Thank you again to our beautiful and amazing panel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Please give a big hand to our amazing panelists.